Hey yo, salute to the people. It's the social forecast. Um, see, and I'm starting this video off wrong, and I know that people are gonna kill me. Y'all already been killing me because y'all people. It's people who feel like I don't have enough respect for the new generation when it comes to music, and a lot of times it's the hip hop talk, but R&B is you know what I'm saying, that's always been my go-to. I've been equally a fan of R&B over the years, as I have been a hip-hop fan. And so aside from the fact that I don't listen to a lot of these new artists, whether it be R&B or hip-hop, I mean, I stopped listening to new artists years ago, but that doesn't mean that I don't pay attention to what's going on. It doesn't mean that I don't hear songs. It's just not on the level of what I'm used to from the golden era of hip hop and even R&B, which is the era that I came up in. But I ask people all the time they don't why they're not willing to stipulate to the fact that a lot of these new young cats coming up now don't have the respect that they should have for the older generation. And I go online, I see a video with Jacquees talking about he's the king of R&B. Now, granted, right, I'm not gonna kill him all the way because he did say for this generation. Cool, I'll give you that. I'm not gonna have a conversation as to whether or not he's the king because I don't feel like anybody's over Chris Brown if we're talking about right now. But you at least have the right to make that argument because as an artist or as in any profession, you're supposed to feel like you're the best at what you do. So I don't knock that. A problem I have is when you jump in a video when Keith Sweat of all people is being called the king of R&B, which he definitely has that claim as one of them. It's multiple kings from back in the day. He's definitely one of them. But when you have the audacity to interrupt a question that he's being asked, when you have the audacity to jump in front of a camera and say, nah, he's an old dude, he's the fuck out of here, I'm the king now. That shit disrespectful on so many different levels. First of all, you gotta approach the right person when you do that. It's certain people, if you see R. Kelly, if you see Usher, if you see Tank, if you see Tyrese, if you see Keith Sweat, if you see any of them, and there's many more who I haven't mentioned, if you see anybody of their caliber being addressed in an interview or on camera, being asked a question about them being the king, don't interrupt them. Don't interrupt anybody who's that caliber of the names I just mentioned because you're just gonna look crazy and you're gonna look disrespectful. And the thing is that y'all young niggas gotta stop. Y'all gotta stop putting the blame on the older generation and saying that we don't want to step aside and let the young people shine. We don't want to give the young people their credit for what they're doing, and that every time, a new younger artist makes a claim at anything as far as accolades go, as far as their status, in music, be it hip hop or R&B, y'all gotta stop saying that. All these old heads pop out the woodwork because that's what they're supposed to do. Because what y'all young dudes have to realize is, without those real kings who have been laying that groundwork and opening the doors for you since the 80s, since the 90s. You can go even farther back to the 70s. You want to talk about the Al Greens and the Marvin Gayes and the Smokey Robinsons. Like, these are the people who lay the groundwork for each generation to come up and do what they do. So when you jump out the window and you say crazy shit like, oh, this person's not doing anything, last time we heard from them was this and was that. Yo, when you throw rocks at the throne, the person who feels like they were on that throne at one point is supposed to come up and say something. That's why you have all these R&B dudes now popping out the woodwork like, yo, what is this little nigga talking about? Like, hold on, like you can't just jump on camera and say king of R&B on some other shit and think that nobody's gonna say anything. And again, I don't have no issue with anybody feeling like that's who they are, but one thing that I feel like this generation of music is really missing is that you younger artists, y'all have to start paying homage to the people who came before you, the people who laid that groundwork down. Like, cause some of the shit that y'all be saying is disrespectful, and some of the things that y'all be coming out y'all mouth, yo. I saw that video. I had to watch that. It was like a 45-second clip. It wasn't even that long. I had to watch that shit like 10 times because I could not believe. It's like, before y'all say the things that y'all say, before y'all are super dismissive over the people who came up back then, the people who made this shit what it is, who gave all the credibility to R&B in the first place, before y'all do that, do your research on some of these artists. You can't just make blanket statements and be like, yo, we haven't heard from this person in this long, or we haven't. Like, how do y'all forget about the people who this is the thing. I guess this is why I'm so hard on the younger generation, right? And this is the same thing when you get into sports and you start having the conversation of like LeBron and Jordan and all that shit. If you grew up watching a certain artist or a certain group of artists do something that you dreamed of doing, that you aspired to doing, once you make it into the game and you start to see those aspirations become a reality, you can never forget that part of the reason why you are where you are is because of that inspiration and motivation that came from those people who came before you. That's just, maybe it's an old school way of thinking. It's just the way that I was taught. You never disrespect the ones that came before you. You always pay homage to that. Like, you can't say, oh, I'm the hot new thing in music now, so I'm the king, and fuck those old heads who don't want to step aside. Nah, you can't have that. You can't have that mindset. And I think that's why we have such a disconnect in music right now. Like, the old generation, the new generation is so widespread as far as attention goes, when really you younger artists should be reaching out to these old heads, these artists who came before you, who really were the kings and really were putting in that work when it was harder to do so, when you couldn't just go online and drop a video, or you couldn't, you know what I'm saying, you had to do things the hard way and it took longer and there was a process. Y'all should be reaching out to these older artists to try and pick their brains and, you know what I'm saying, talk to them about how they might be able to help y'all attain that longevity in music, rather than just jumping out the window and disrespecting whoever it is. And you can't, this is the problem I have too, because I think Tory Lanez had jumped in too, and he was saying something about Tyrese and how, you know, you was beefing with The Rock and then talking about dropping a hip hop album, and now all of a sudden you got shit to say because Jacquees said he was the king of R&B. When you make a statement, right, and that statement is directed at anybody who's in that field of work that you're in, you can expect them to say something, and they're not wrong for doing that. Because if y'all don't have no respect on Tyrese's name for the contributions he made to R&B, you motherfucking crazy. I don't give a fuck how long ago it was. You motherfucking crazy. Tank, Tyrese, all of them. You crazy. Like, these motherfuckers sang for real, for real. And I watched the video, I listened to an interview where they were asking Tyrese about it, and his point was actually pretty dope. He was like, listen, he was like, the problem is that I don't classify what these younger kids are doing as true R&B. You listen to their projects, it's more of a hip hop feel. It doesn't have the same qualities of a true, authentic hip hop R&B record or R&B album. And he's 100% truthful about that. That's 100% facts. And when I think of R&B, I don't think of a lot of the shit that these new younger R&B artists are putting out. I don't. I mean, I still get that feel from Chris Brown, but he kind of teeters, you know what I'm saying? He jumps in and out of that bag. But Usher, you know, up until very recently, he's what I would call one of the last real true R&B artists, right? Tank just recently put out another album, and it's true R&B, but it's a type of shit that is not really being checked for nowadays. And I get it, because these younger kids now, they're on a different type of bounce. You know, they classify things totally different. And the same thing as the conversation with hip hop. If we're going to continue to call what the singers are doing R&B, we need to create another subset for it, because you can't jump in this lane and what you're doing doesn't match up with what true authentic R&B is, and you still call it R&B. If you feel like you're the king of what you do, that's fine, but we need to designate a whole different lane for what it is that they do, because it's not R&B. It's not. I mean, it may be that as far as how it's categorized, but it's got to have another, you know what I'm saying? It's got to have a whole different subset to it. It has to, because it don't match up. The quality doesn't match up. And it's not to say that these newer songs don't sound good, and it's not to say that these newer songs aren't good for what they are, for what is liked now, and what people have an ear for now. But you can't call it that. It's not the same thing. So I don't know. That's just my take on it, Jacquees. Anyway, before I go, if we was gonna have a real serious conversation about who the king of R&B present day is, I could think of at least six, seven, eight artists. I wouldn't even put Jacquees on that list. That's the funny thing. So of all people, the person who said it wouldn't even be on most people's list. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm a little bit late on this, but shit is crazy. I don't. Let me know what y'all think about this crazy shit. Like, comment, and subscribe. I don't pretend to know everything. I just know what I know. I'll see you on the next one. Peace and love.